All men, no matter their age, will go hard for you if you simply put your finger in the right three places. That's not an exaggeration. It's biology, psychology, and emotion all working together. Because a man's desire isn't just hidden in his body, it's hidden in his mind. And when you know where to touch him, you don't just turn him on, you unlock something ancient, something primal, something that makes him look at you like you're the only woman in the world. Hello, I'm Dr. Rachel Myers, Maryland, board certified obstetrician gynecologist with over 20 years of experience helping women navigate menopause, hormone shifts, and intimate wellness after 40. I've spent decades studying the connection between touch, hormones, and emotional intimacy. And what I've learned is this: physical connection after 50 isn't about performance, it's about presence. It's about rediscovering your natural feminine power, the kind that doesn't fade with age, but deepens with wisdom. Most women believe men only crave the obvious, but here's the beautiful paradox. The most powerful places to touch a man are often the ones he never expects. They're not loud or sexual, they're quiet, tender, and intimate. These spots speak to his heart long before they speak to his body. Today I'll show you exactly what those three places are and how to touch him in a way that melts his defenses, awakens his desire, and rebuilds the emotional bond between you. And stay with me until the end, because the last place I'll reveal isn't where you think, but it will change how he responds to you forever. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and tap the bell icon so you never miss another intimacy and wellness tip designed especially for women over 50. And I'd love to hear from you. If this topic speaks to you, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 and tell me what kind of advice you'd like me to share next. Now that you understand the power of intentional touch, let's begin with the first place every man secretly longs for you to explore. It's not what most women think, yet it holds the key to unlocking both his desire and his trust: the back of his neck. 1. The back of his neck, the gateway between strength and surrender. The back of a man's neck is one of the most underestimated places on his body, yet it carries more power than most realize. It's not just a patch of skin, it's a crossroads where strength meets vulnerability. When I first learned this years ago while counseling couples, I remember how surprised many women were when I explained it. They'd say, "Really? His neck?" And I'd smile because yes, that's where everything begins. The back of the neck holds nerve endings connected directly to the spinal cord, a pathway to the part of the brain that controls emotion, safety, and pleasure. It's where his body listens before his mind even understands what's happening. When you touch him there gently and slowly, you send a message that says, "You're safe, you can let go now." That's powerful, especially for a man who spends most of his life being in control, leading, deciding, protecting. When you glide your finger from his hairline down to the nape of his neck, you're inviting him to step out of that constant control and into connection. I remember one of my patients, a woman in her late 50s, who told me she and her husband had grown distant. They still loved each other, but the spark felt gone. I told her, "Don't say a word, just touch the back of his neck while you're standing close, maybe while he's reading or cooking." A week later, she came back laughing and blushing. "Dr. Myers," she said, "I can't believe what that one touch did." He froze for a moment, turned around, and looked at me like we were 20 again. That's how profound a single intentional touch can be. The secret is in the softness. This isn't about grabbing or rubbing. It's about barely being there, letting your fingertip hover just enough to make his skin tingle. That light teasing touch creates a shiver that travels straight down his spine, not just physically, but emotionally. It tells him he can be both strong and open with you, masculine yet surrendered. And if you ever want to heighten the connection, lean close as you do it. Let your breath brush against his ear. Your hands slide gently over the back of his neck. The warmth of your presence, combined with that touch, will make him melt. It's subtle, but it will stay in his mind long after the moment has passed. Because once you learn how to touch him there, he won't just feel you, he'll remember you. And when you're ready to take that connection even deeper, there's another place even more delicate, even more intimate, waiting for your touch. 2. The inside of his wrist, the pulse of intimacy. If the back of his neck is where trust begins, then the inside of his wrist is where intimacy comes alive. This tiny, delicate area is often overlooked, but it holds a kind of quiet power that goes straight to his heart. I still remember the first time a patient told me she tried this after one of our sessions. She said, "Dr. Myers, it was so simple, but he couldn't stop smiling at me the rest of the night." That's what happens when you learn to touch a man where his pulse lives. Biologically, the inside of the wrist is rich with nerve endings and blood flow. It's where his heartbeat rises closest to the surface, a rhythmic reminder that he's alive, that he's feeling, that he's connected. When your finger traces that soft patch of skin, you're not just touching his body, you're touching his life force. It's like whispering to him without words, I feel you, I'm here with you. Men rarely experience gentle, intentional touch in places that aren't explicitly sexual. Their world is full of handshakes, backslaps, and quick hugs. So when your hand lingers on his wrist, it's different. It's intimate without being demanding, sensual without being loud. That difference makes him pause. It makes him feel seen in a way that most men never do. Try it sometime when you're sitting across from him, maybe over coffee, maybe at dinner. Let your conversation flow naturally, then slowly reach out and let your finger glide across the inside of his wrist. Don't grab or hold. Just trace slow and soft. Watch how the energy changes. You might see his breath catch or notice the way he looks at you a little longer than before. That's his nervous system reacting. It's not just arousal, it's recognition. His body is telling him, this moment matters. What I love about this kind of touch is how it turns something ordinary into something sacred. A simple movement becomes a language of its own. When your eyes meet his, as your finger rests on that pulse, you're synchronizing your rhythms, his heartbeat with your presence. It's as if your touch says you don't have to speak. I already understand. And the beauty is, it doesn't end there, because once he's felt that spark of connection, that delicate charge running through his body, he's ready for something deeper. A touch that blends protection with passion, where your presence both grounds and claims him. And that place, perhaps the most magnetic of all, waits just a little lower on his body. 3. The small of his back, the spot of guidance and claim. The small of a man's back is where everything you've built through touch, trust, safety, and intimacy comes together. It's a place few women truly understand. Yet when you touch him there, it awakens something instinctive inside him. I'll never forget a woman I once counseled, a quiet, graceful lady in her early 60s. She told me, Dr. Myers, I tried everything to make him feel close again. Nothing worked. I asked her, when's the last time you touched the small of his back? She looked at me puzzled, and I said, try it tonight, not when you're in bed, just when you're walking past him. The next week, she came back glowing. I did it, she said softly, and he just stopped. He turned, smiled, and pulled me close. It was like he remembered us. There's a reason that happens. Biologically, the lower back is rich in nerve pathways connected to the spine and hips, both areas tied to strength and stability. But beneath the anatomy lies something deeper. It's symbolic. The small of the back is a place of protection and possession where leadership and surrender meet. When you rest your hand there, even lightly, you're saying, I'm here, I trust you, and I want you. It's grounding, guiding, and deeply intimate all at once. When you touch him there in public, maybe while crossing the street or standing beside him, it sends a subtle message to both him and the world. This is my person, and I feel safe with him. In private, that same gesture becomes a whisper of passion. The warmth of your palm or the glide of a single finger can send ripples of electricity down his spine. You'll notice how he instinctively straightens his posture, how his body leans into your hand without him even realizing it. It's not control, it's connection. He feels desired, anchored, and chosen. That's the beauty of this spot. It speaks in two languages at once, comfort and desire. It tells him he's safe while reminding him he's wanted. And for a man who's carried the weight of years of expectations and responsibility, that touch can feel like a homecoming. Because when your hand finds that space just above his waist, you're not just reminding him of passion, you're reminding him of belonging. And once you see how he reacts, you'll understand why this touch lingers in his memory. But what if I told you there's one more place, unexpected, dangerously close to his pride, that can transform attraction into devotion forever? 4. The edge of his jawline, where admiration turns into desire. There's something magnetic about a man's jawline. It's one of the most defining features of his masculinity. Sharp, structured, full of quiet power. Yet beneath that strength lies an unexpected softness, one that very few people ever get close enough to touch. I still remember the first time a patient told me she traced her husband's jaw the way I had suggested. She laughed a little embarrassed and said, Dr. Myers, I don't know what came over him. He just froze. It was like I'd reminded him he was still wanted. That's the thing about this touch. It's simple, but it carries the weight of admiration, respect, and longing all at once. When you slide your finger along the edge of his jaw, you're not just acknowledging his appearance, you're acknowledging his essence. You're saying, without words, I see your strength, but I also see the man underneath it. For men, especially those over 50, who've spent decades being defined by what they do rather than who they are, that moment of being truly seen is powerful. Your touch becomes a reflection of acceptance, not just attraction. The skin along the jawline is sensitive but firm, connected to nerve pathways that respond instantly to even the lightest pressure. When you touch him there, you're awakening something both primal and emotional. It's the perfect blend of reverence and temptation, soft enough to comfort him, close enough to spark anticipation. Try this. As you're speaking to him, tilt his chin slightly with your fingertip. Let your eyes meet his and trace along the line of his jaw slowly. Don't rush. That quiet pause between touch and intention will make him hold his breath. It's not about control, it's about communication. The jaw is close enough to his lips that it creates a delicious kind of tension. It's a silent promise of what could happen next. He may not say anything, but his eyes will. You'll see a flicker there, the mix of surprise, pleasure, and need. That's when you know he's no longer thinking about the day, his worries, or the years that have passed. He's completely in that moment with you, because that's what the edge of his jawline does. It brings him back to presence. It reminds him he's still desirable, still seen, still alive. And when your touch lingers there, just a breath away from his lips, it opens a doorway to the next level of connection. And that next place, closer, softer, and far more intimate, holds the secret to turning attraction into something unforgettable. 5. The lower lip, the edge of anticipation. There's something extraordinary about a man's lower lip. It's not just a feature of his face, it's a threshold between restraint and surrender. The first time I realized how powerful this was, it wasn't in a clinic, but during a conversation with a dear friend of mine in her 50s. She told me, Rachel, I leaned in to kiss him, but instead of going straight for it, I traced my finger along his lower lip. He froze. It was like the world stopped. I smiled because I knew exactly what she meant. That small, daring act isn't about taking control. It's about rewriting the rhythm of desire. The lower lip is full of nerve endings that react to even the slightest contact. When your finger glides across it, you're sending thousands of signals straight to his brain's pleasure centers. But it's more than biology. It's about tension, the kind that lingers between what is and what could be. When you hover close, just inches from his lips, and trace that soft curve instead of kissing him, you're saying, I could, but not yet. That pause, that playful restraint, ignites something far more powerful than instant gratification. It awakens his imagination. It makes him chase you, not out of habit, but out of curiosity. What makes this touch unforgettable is how intimate it feels. You're close enough to feel his breath, close enough to see his eyes shift, yet you're holding back. That subtle control tells him something words never could. You are confident, sensual, and fully aware of your power, and that confidence is intoxicating. He's not just responding to your touch, he's responding to the energy behind it. It's the kind of moment that stays replaying in his mind long after you pulled away. When you trace his lower lip slowly, let your eyes meet his. Stay in that silence for a heartbeat longer than feels comfortable. That's where desire blooms. In the quiet, in the waiting, in the places where imagination takes over. Because desire isn't about doing more, it's about doing less with intention. And once you've mastered that kind of presence, the kind that teases, awakens, and commands attention, you're ready to understand the secret behind why these touches don't just arouse a man, but bind him to you in ways far deeper than skin. 6. The space between his words, touching him without touching. Sometimes the most powerful touch doesn't come from your hands at all. It comes from the space between your words, the silence, the glance, the breath you take right before you say something. I learned this lesson years ago, sitting across from a couple in their late 60s. They'd been married for 40 years, but the wife told me, it feels like we stopped seeing each other. I watched the husband lower his head as she spoke, and in that pause, before he even said a word, she reached out, just brushed her fingers across his hand, and whispered, I still miss you. That moment changed everything. It wasn't just physical, it was presence. The truth is, real intimacy isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in those small, quiet moments where attention replaces touch and understanding replaces words. When you look into his eyes and truly see him, See the years, the effort, the quiet strength, something inside him softens. That emotional connection, that sense of being understood, is the deepest form of arousal a man can feel. Because for men, especially those over 50, desire is rarely just physical anymore. It's about safety. It's about being seen without judgment. It's about knowing that with you, he can exhale. Try this next time you talk. Don't rush to fill the silence. Let it linger. Let him feel your gaze, your energy, your warmth. That's a form of touch too. When you reach him emotionally, his body follows naturally. His defenses drop, his heart opens, and he begins to crave your presence more than your body. And when he finally does reach for you, it's not out of habit. It's out of need, out of connection, out of pure trust. This is what I call invisible touch, the kind that never fades. It doesn't require youth or perfection, only awareness and care. When you master this, every glance becomes an invitation, every breath a reminder that he's not just wanted, he's cherished. That's the kind of intimacy that men never forget. Because when you can touch him without even laying a hand on him, you stop being just another woman in his life. You become the one his heart can't stop remembering. And once you understand that truth, you're ready for the final key. How to bring all of these touches together to create a bond that only deepens with time. 7. Bringing it all together. The art of lasting connection. Every touch, every glance, every breath between you and him is a language. And when you learn how to speak it, you don't just stir his desire, you awaken his devotion. I've seen it time and again in my patients. Women in their 50, 60, even 70, who rediscovered that connection after thinking it was gone forever. One woman once told me, Dr. Myers, I didn't realize how much power I still had until I slowed down and touched him like I meant it. That sentence stayed with me because that's what this entire journey is about. Meaning, when you touch the back of his neck, the inside of his wrist, the small of his back, when you trace along his jawline or linger at his lip, what you're really doing is speaking to his soul. You're saying, I see you. I still choose you. And that message is far more intoxicating than any act of seduction. Men may forget what you said or even what you wore, but they will never forget how you made them feel. That's the secret that turns fleeting attraction into something eternal. As women, especially after 50, we often underestimate the power of our own presence. Hormones change, bodies shift, but sensual energy, real feminine energy, only grows deeper with time. When you approach intimacy from a place of confidence and curiosity rather than fear or performance, everything changes. The air between you becomes charged again. Not because you're trying to be younger, but because you're embracing the woman you've become, wise, grounded, and beautifully in control of her energy. So the next time you're with him, remember, it's not about doing everything right. It's about being fully there. Let your touches be intentional, your pauses meaningful, your eye contact steady. That's where passion lives. In the moments when you're not chasing it, but creating space for it to bloom naturally. And as you feel that spark return, you'll realize something wonderful. Connection isn't lost with age. It deepens, it refines, it becomes richer and more real. Because true intimacy doesn't come from youth, it comes from presence. And in the conclusion ahead, I'll show you how to use these touches not just to awaken passion, but to rebuild lasting emotional closeness that makes love feel new again, no matter your age. Conclusion: the power of a woman's touch. In the end, it isn't just about where you touch a man, it's about how you touch him. Each of these moments, the back of his neck, his wrist, the small of his back, his jawline, his lips, and even the quiet space between your words creates something deeper than passion. It builds trust, connection, and emotional safety. I've seen it countless times. When a woman touches with intention, everything changes. His walls come down, his eyes soften, and he feels chosen all over again. That is the beauty of intimacy after 50. It's no longer about performance, it's about presence. So don't be afraid to reach for him to remind him that desire doesn't fade with age, it matures. And when you master that, you don't just touch his body, you touch his heart. And that's what keeps love alive for a lifetime.